Finding serial arsonists or purse snatchers can take some hard work, but as News 10's Caitlin Conrad shows us, popular TV shows can make their jobs even harder.
It is a recent and somewhat disturbing phenomenon in today's courtroom. It's known as the CSI Effect.
Hollywood crime shows have made forensic evidence all the rage, but in truth it can be dangerously unreliable.
With shows like CSI, jurors here at the courthouse almost expect there to be DNA evidence in every single case, but local law enforcement says that simply doesn't happen.
On TV and in real life, forensic science plays an important role in criminal convictions. Prosecutors often complain about a so-called CSI effect.
A serious homicide back in the mid-1990s where a 15-year-old juvenile was convicted of killing his neighbor, the mother of his two best friends. It was considered an overkill type of homicide where the victim was stabbed over 100 times. And during that case, the prosecution was able to obtain physical evidence from the scene and forensic evidence from the scene, which included hair fibers, both the victims and the defendants, as well as blood evidence, DNA evidence from the victim and the defendant, and fingerprint evidence that was all collected at the scene and was brought out at trial. And that was an important case where there was an overwhelming support of evidence by way of forensic evidence that linked the defendant to the victim. The defendant at the time, again, 15-year-old juvenile, had what he portrayed as an alibi, alleged to have been at a completely different location, and that he had received a laceration to his hand based on he himself being robbed. At that point, if there was no physical evidence at the scene, if there wasn't forensic evidence at the scene, he, the defendant, may have had an alibi not to put him at the scene. So the forensic evidence that was at the scene, especially his blood on the victim's body, his hair on her body, and vice versa. There was hair samples taken at the scene. It was very difficult for a defense attorney to say he wasn't there and wasn't involved in the actual crime itself. My name is Charlie Femino. I worked in Sarasota, Florida for 3 years on the police department before joining the Somerville Police Department here in Massachusetts, where I spent a career of 32 years. I rose through the ranks to police chief in my last year prior to coming here. I have a master's in education from Boston University, and I'm also an active attorney here in Massachusetts.
My name is Juliana, I'm 21, and I watch a lot of crime shows. So my go-to show, if I'm watching Netflix or Hulu, I'm scrolling through those, I'll usually go to Law & Order SVU and Lucifer. It's kind of a crime-based show.
So, no sign of the murder weapon? You sure? Right. Nothing left for us to do here then, I suppose.
Except for figuring out how 6 people were killed.
If I'm watching one of my favorite shows, I'll probably watch it a couple times a week. I would say maybe 3 out of 5 days. If I find similar shows that are linked to the ones that I am watching, I'll usually end up watching those as well, and I'll just get hooked on episode and find a bunch of shows that are very similar. This is real life, but, you know, obviously there are going to be very wild reenactments. It won't be fact for fact. Like, obviously you want to make things more interesting to viewers, so you have to amp it up a little, and obviously everything can't be 100% real. It's not possible.
This is just way too easy.
Yeah, that's right. Chase me.
I thought you had skills. Oh boy.
Have fun getting out of the wormhole.
So the CSI Effect is basically terminology that was coined back in early 2000 after crime scene shows when they started to come on television. And it basically is our ways that unrealistically portray forensic science and the importance of forensic science in some ways. You'll see it in different manners. In other words, you'll see the CSI Effect both as from the police perspective, you'll see officers go to a scene and look for forensic evidence, whether it be blood evidence, hair fibers, etc.
I wasn't able to confirm his identity using fingerprints.
Yeah, the guppies got to him first. That is the circle of life, gentlemen. I mean that in the most respectful way possible, by the way.
You'll also see it from the criminal's perspective. There's been a lot of criminals who watch television also, and in that respect, the criminal is actually doing a lot more than they used to do based on watching those television shows and covering up their evidence. For example, wearing gloves during the crime.
Criminals could definitely get some ideas off this. Whether they successfully pull it off or not is a very different story, but there are some good ideas to be had off it if you were to have a criminal mindset like that, if you wanted to do things. But I think a lot of people would fail at that, and they could try, but they can realize once they're doing it, it's TV, and they're not going to get away with it at all.
I mean, a lot of crimes are not thought out. They're crimes of it's just happened. So that's the majority. But there's definitely people who will try to stage something and think they're smarter. Unfortunately, following crime shows might not be the best course of action because those are abbreviated things and they're not always based on reality. My name's Paul Sullivan. I'm a sergeant on the Mass State Police, currently assigned to the Office of Media Relations. I have worked in field I broke in Framingham Barracks, worked in Shelburne Falls, worked at Concord, worked at Athol Barracks, back to the Concord Barracks, and then January 2007, I went to ballistics. Ballistics is an identification science. So what we do is identify firearms with cartridge casings and bullets that they expel. So it's part of crime scene processing, but it's a very specific field.
I think if I had to name one area, the CSI Effect has the most impact, I think, is in the courtroom. In the courtroom, you'll have jurors who have an unrealistic view of what and the importance of forensic evidence. And so when they're listening to, whether it be the prosecutor presenting their case, they're expecting, and the prosecutors need to have a meticulous way in presenting the forensic evidence. And then from the defense attorney's perspective, they would be looking at, in some cases, they're dismissing potential jurors based on them watching those crime scene shows to begin with.
For the prosecutor, the defense, the judge, you don't see the CSI effect. They understand everything for the most part. They'll have questions, they may not know the specifics, but they understand the general concepts. The juries, some of them expect more than what we can do, but that's part of our job, is to explain what we do and what the limitations of what we can do. NCIS used to, that'd be one I found more entertaining, and of course throw them up and then boom, boom, oh, there, it's a match. It's like, that almost never happens. I have one case that had happened, and that was because I was messing around with, I came in, one of the other guys was working a case, it was a shooting, they needed it done right away. He's having a hard time. I took one of the pieces of evidence, took it over to one of the other microscopes, put everything up, set it up, line it up, go, up, I get a match. And then I actually look at it and go, hey, wait a minute. I think I do have a match. And dumb luck, I lined up everything perfectly. And we looked and examined it after that. I mean, we spent another half hour making sure, yeah, that is a match. But that was just messing around. It was pure luck. Does not happen like that. So the process is drawn out. It's not instantaneous. But if you did that in a TV show, it would take the whole show just to do the most basic stuff. You'll have never gotten anything done.
My father is a police officer in Lowell, so I've heard a couple of cases. He never really, when I do ask about them, like if I hear about them, he never really mentions anything about forensic evidence. Like, that's not a huge thing. It's just mostly, yeah, we kind of found him through certain leads, and then he just ended up, like, that whatever they did, I don't go into specifics. It's just not repeat after repeat like that. Like, that's not, you need to grab people a certain way, and obviously you can't do that in real life. So you gotta kind of portray it. It's like actors in movies. It's not real life, but you can pretend it is. I've been in the police station a couple times. It's not as busy as you would think. You know, like, a lot of them are out on duty and they're just on the streets or where they're set to be. Like, some police officers are more geared towards getting tickets. Others are more just scoping out an area. Like, they're told to sit in one spot or like go on a certain street and just sit there and just like make sure people are like following the rules. But nothing was crazy. Like, people came in every once in a while, like if they were bringing someone in or someone needed to go to like the desk and ask a question, they'd either leave or go to a different part, but it wasn't crazy like that.
The worst scenes, like you go to homicide, suicides, you get parents kill their kids. Those ones are hard. You go to a gangbanger and this one does this, like you do gallows humor to keep your sanity is really what it comes down to.
That's true. He was a bad cabbie. Should have seen the route he took us to get here.
Stop. So we can't giggle. It's a crime scene. Stop it.
You're looking at, people like, oh, that's someone's family member. That's something that, like, and I've gone to shootings where I've gone to an investigation with a homicide, suicide with a former police officer I worked with. So I'm dealing with people I knew. And I've been to suicides of people who, kids of someone I know. So, you do understand that, but those are really hard cases. You're using the humor just to keep light of things, not to make fun of, because if you start thinking about someone's life and this and poor that, you'll just start sending yourself crazy.
Welcome to NCIS.
How'd you know my size?
Put them on. Can't work a field in high heels.
Depends on the kind of work you're doing.
Your mind, DiNozzo, runs the gamut from X to triple X.
Yeah.
Photos, Tony.
I think that if I had to speak to a group who had aspirations of joining law enforcement at any level, I would just remind them that that phenomenon is there, the CSI effect, and that they shouldn't base their decision on entering the occupation because it's somewhat unrealistic as to what the job entails. There's many young persons who go into this occupation thinking that they want to be a detective right away, and they want to do drug activity right away, and that takes a period of time, and based on experience, that's when you get those positions. So I think those people who are going in have to realize that and not have an unrealistic view of what the job is about based on the CSI effect.